there's two different kinds of scoring. I don't think there's a common consensus among sourdough bakers about what to call them, but around here we call it functional scoring and ornamental scoring, or decorative scoring, but it's the same thing. So functional scoring is the only one that matters between the two as far as getting a good loaf of bread, because your bread, as it bakes in the oven, will rise and expand. And if you don't give your loaf a weak spot to expand, it's going to find one for you and kind of crack and grow in ways that might be unpleasant. And you'll have like a misshapen loaf, or it'll kind of burst out of the side seam. And so you can control the way that your loaf will expand by giving it a functional score. And the way that we do that here is kind of the big cut down the side at a 30-degree angle. It's a fairly deep one. It's what gives you what's called an ear, the little lip that rises up. And depending on your loaf, it can be a big X, it can be a circle, it can be all manner of things, but those seem to be the most common and basic ones. And then what I'm doing right now is far less important in terms of just getting a good loaf of bread goes, but we place importance on here to speak to what John was talking about earlier. The reason why we do this, I don't remember because it was almost 2 years ago now, but when I first started, I believe it was Amanda that was telling me why we do the ornamental decorative scoring. And that's something that's really stuck with me, was that I'm showing to the outside public all of the beauty and magic and work that goes into producing a singular loaf. Because, you know, there's so much in food production that the general public is so far removed from when it comes to where food grows, how it's produced, and just all the work that goes into a singular loaf of bread before it ever reaches your table. The wheat stalk here is a classic pattern, but I think it's really fitting for this kind of thing. And, you know, we are an artisan bakery. Our hands are involved in every part of the process, even though we use electric mixers. I think there's a lot of bakeries out there that kind of get away with calling themselves artisan when maybe they probably shouldn't. It's probably misleading. It's kind of like the boundary of what can legally be called cheese and then what has to be called cheese product, except for I don't think there's really any regulation as far as who can call themselves artisan and who can't. But there's a lot of hands involved. But really what people are seeing and what they're judging their shopping on, you know, when they're at the market and they're trying to decide who they're buying bread from, there's a lot of weight that goes into my role as a baker and a bread artist. Because, you know, if you know this channel and you know John, you know that we can talk about bread a whole lot. And we know the magic and the wonder of fermentation and the long processes in bread. But the normal person, the average person, I should say, you know, really doesn't care all that much. But I think seeing some whimsy, some art in a place that they're not expecting to, can really be a great way to kind of be a bridge to show people the magic in what we do to the average person who hasn't really had a reason to think about everything that goes into making a single loaf of bread. In the end, you're seeing a lot my work on the outside, but you're not seeing, you know, the wheat in the field and the milling process that also happens locally, and the people on the mixers and the people shaping. When you're at the market, this is all you see, and so I really want some of that to come across symbolically. The wheat stalk is simple, elegant, but depending on the season and my mood, there can be all manner of designs on here, and I think that's also part of the artisan process, is that each loaf is truly unique. It's rare that any given loaf has been handled by the same person from start to finish. As far as the blades go, there's a few different factors that go into how quickly the blades dull. Probably the most obvious one is how often you're using it. I tend to switch sides of the blades probably every 200 loaves, I would guess. But if I'm scoring something that has inclusions in it, like walnuts or cranberries, those are gonna dull the blades much faster. But having the sharpest blade isn't necessarily important for things like that. It still gets the job done. It's more when you're doing decorative stuff that it really starts to show. You'll start to see the lines getting jagged or the blade pulling on the dough. But when you're getting sharp, crisp, clean lines like this, then you're in good shape. The biggest indicator really is when my decorative scoring is suffering, then I know it's time to switch them out. Since we have so many Wire Monkey shop lamps here, just to save some time during this process, I'll load them all up and then just kind of switch through as the blades start to dull before I start to bother with switching out the fresh sides of the blades. But I would imagine the average person at home, if they have a lamb at all, don't have an arsenal of them. So as long as you're keeping your blade clean between use, I know people who will use the same blade for months before they need to switch it out. As far as practice goes, I'm in a fairly unique and rare position. As far as I can tell, in the sourdough bread art community, the people who are really into making artistic, beautiful scored loaves, I can't think of any bakeries off the top of my head that do this. There are some cottage bakers that do it. So, you know, the same type of bakery that Proof has started out as, home bakers. But they'll do a handful of loaves just for fun. It's not something they sell to the general public. Some are just home hobby bakers. I can't think of any place where you can walk into a bakery and buy some of the things that we do, from the simple wheat sock score to the more elaborate centerpieces. So by pure volume, I get a lot of practice. But the other tricky thing about that is that since I score so many, I don't necessarily get immediate feedback, especially in this setup where I'm handing them over to John and I lose track of them immediately. So if I'm trying to experiment with something, I'll have to go dig for a particular loaf. And so if I'm trying to maybe experiment with a certain scoring angle, in this environment where we have now, that's going to be a little trickier for me. It's going to be something where we have a bit slower of a day. I have more downtime, some time set aside to experiment. Because by the time I get done scoring just what's on this board, I've already forgotten what I'm doing. or what I've done. And so I do get a lot more experience than the average baker, but I also have less time per loaf. If you're just doing this at home for fun, you can spend as much time as you want, but we have hundreds and hundreds of loaves to get through, and I'm not gonna be very happy, John's not gonna be very happy, the bread's not gonna be very happy if I spend 10 minutes on each one to do something really elaborate, which is about, I think, 10 to 20 minutes on my really elaborate centerpieces is the upper range if I'm doing just scoring. That's where I spend most of my time experimenting with techniques or on the bigger ones. Ooh, we got our big boys. So right now I'm just doing a quick little reshape of the baguettes. I like them to have the little knobby ends. Some of these just kind of soften up as they're in the fridge. So just like to get them nice and uniform, have the crispy ends. And my baguette scoring, while never particularly as exceptional as Amanda's, definitely rustier now than before. It's been quite a while. So working down the middle third. This is really the only instance where I use a traditional lame with a curved blade. Those are really well suited for baguettes. Working on the middle third, I do 3 staggered cuts with a little bit of overlap here. And if you get it at the right depth and the right angle, and also, you know, everything that's gone on beforehand comes into play for sure. Oh, I needed that, John.
Oh, sorry.
Good scoring really comes out with good gluten development and good shaping and good fridge temps, good everything. So just working down that middle third. I would say 3 cuts is the minimum. You can go up to 5 if you're skilled and feeling fancy, which I'm not sure that I am. So I'm just gonna try to stick to the basics here while I'm still trying to improve my skills here. So these are the bigger baguettes that we've just recently started making. They're nearly twice the size in weight. And then you can see there's quite a bit of a length difference here. So I try to make them a little bit closer in size there. Although variation is not bad. It is made by hand after all. There's going to be natural variations there. Coating with a nice layer of rice flour, totally optional. Some people prefer the naked look, which does have its merits. Blisters really tend to pop out with without the rice flour, which is its own great look. This end is a little thicker. I think I'm going to make this one the snake head. Make this point a little bit more exaggerated for the face. And then this is going to have to be adjusted as soon as we put it on the belt anyways, and I tend to stretch these out a little bit more than the other ones, just so you got a little bit more to work with here. I found it brings a bit of, you know, fun whimsy to the market table. No one, you know, who expects to see a snake-shaped baguette? So you can see these are our standard size baguettes, much smaller by comparison. And depending on who's shaping baguettes, some people don't stretch them out all the way because it's easy enough to just do it here after the gluten has had some time to relax. It's much more difficult and time consuming to do it all in the front end. And since there's a bit of reshaping that goes in this step anyways, it's easy enough for me to do really quickly. So I like to get those nice sides. If it's lost any pointiness, I like to get those again. Love the crispy ends of a baguette.
All of us were sort of excited for one reason or another to make the big baguettes here in this facility. The double deep oven allows us to go way deeper with them. I mean, we could make a baguette that's this long. I still want to do that at some point.
I think it's just because we want to. And now that we have like a storefront window to display them on, why not, you know?
All right, so that particular loading method, I lost one, which is not terrible.
I assume you just want these to go right over here?
Yeah, might as well. So these really came out exactly like I would hope. You can see the influence of the particular scoring, and I don't know exactly, I don't know what shape you would call this, but this is exactly what you're looking for with a baguette. You can see the sort of risk of if you don't overlap enough, you get a little bit of narrowing. I'm not upset about it here because it's still a beautiful baguette, but the idea is to get more even shape throughout. You can see the lines are still relatively straight on either end on this side.
This is a good one.
It's another really ideal specimen. They say that even amounts of scoring look better than, or odd amounts of scoring look better than even. I don't know if that's true or not, but we typically do 3s or 5s. And essentially people coming in the door today are coming in the next hour buying these breads pretty much straight from the oven. The difference between a large one and a small one right here. So substantially different in size. Both definitely have their uses. One baguette got abandoned in the oven. This one did not get caught by the loader. It's the only thing today that didn't get caught, and then I forgot to grab the peel. So now it's a little bit dark compared to all the rest. So
Toasty.
very toasty.